a motion to accept the agenda? Okay. Okay. Confirmation of September 15th council meeting minutes. Any errors? If not, can I have a motion to accept those?
I didn't have a chance to read through them. I don't have a computer either.
They were sent with the agenda.
Yeah, they probably were. I just missed it. If you didn't find any errors,
I did not find
Or I
any.
didn't find any,
Okay.
but
Okay, do you want to make that motion?
I can do that, yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Okay. Business arising from the minutes, a residential bylaw amendment request to the parking bylaw. So if you were here a couple of meetings ago, someone received a letter, and it was an issue with parking at Ross Place. We had our peace officer take a look at it, do some research for us, came back with information on how that would affect not just Ross Place, but other places in town as well. And so the recommendation was that we leave it as is. And he also has experience as an as a paramedic, and indicates that, pardon me, despite the possibility of snow piles on both sides of that private sidewalk, that they would not have difficulty getting people in and out or past the snow drifts. So at this time, the recommendation was that we leave the bylaw as it is with no changes to the current parking bylaw. So I guess the motion would be that administration send a letter to the residents. Do you want it as a motion, Lindsay? Yeah. Okay. So what does council want to do?
Leave it the way it was.
well, explain the rules and
Yeah,
have them properly applied the way we should, and we may or may not accept their application.
So is that going to be your motion, that we leave the bylaw the way it is and that no changes at this time as per recommended
Sure.
by Peace Officer Stevens? Okay, all in favor of that motion? And that is carried. Okay, as part of our municipal review, it was noted that we needed a bylaw for an assessment review board. This board hears complaints about assessments for commercial properties and for residential properties with more than 3 dwelling units. And apparently that was something that we did not have in place at the time of the review. Is that correct, Lindsay? Yeah. Okay, so we have that bylaw in front of us. Does somebody want to give it first reading? Okay, all in favor? Somebody want to give it second reading? Okay, all in favor? I'll move it forward for third reading. All in favor? Okay, and who wants to give it third and final? Okay, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay.
If I may have a favor, just a little bit of background on this. We are fortunate that we've got an assessor who is just dead by the book. I think in my time here, I think we've had 2 appeals and they were both like baseless, that the person just didn't want to pay their taxes. Anytime there is a legitimate cause to adjust assessment, Steve and I would get together and we just do the right thing. Like we head off almost all assessment appeals like before they even occur, because we've got a couple thousand properties and there's 5 every year that aren't quite right. We just fix them. So what we do is this puts us into a regional assessment pool, and when we did have an appeal this year, we just used the people from Airdrie. Because it's quick and it's painless and it's less expense and bureaucracy than for us to have all the machinery in place for one appeal every 2 or 3 or 4 years. So it's just a faster way, easier way to get it. It's the path of least bureaucracy.
Okay. All right. Business arising from mayor and councillors. Business and committee had a library board meeting, a Rocky View handy bus meeting. The Marigold Standards and Services meeting was canceled. I don't see it on the agenda, but I was going to bring it up. There was a request, and I don't know if we have a specific phone number that we want people to phone if used needles are found. We talked about perhaps having the fire department do that. If Officer Stevens is around, I know that he has the skills and training to pick up used needles, as well as I'm sure our fire department. Is there a way that we can?
They just need like needle boxes on it.
Well, I know, but I don't disagree with the needle boxes, but before we do that, I would want feedback from the fire department. And so far, I think there's been 3 reports, 2 at one time and another one standing on its own. So for 3 reports, I'm not sure that we need to go to that base yet. Before we do that, I'd like to get some more feedback. Maybe the fire department or Officer Stevens has more information on that. But even if we have a phone number that people could report to, that they see a needle in such and such a place, because not just everybody should pick one up. And so if we could have a designated phone number, or in our next newsletter, just put on there that, you know, if used needles are found, these are the numbers that you call and leave a message at, so that we can get the appropriate people picking them up. I don't disagree with breaking the needles or sticking them into the ground, but I think there's a better way to do it. And so, and that way we can kind of keep a bit of an eye on how often it's happening as well. And then if we need follow-up or we need second steps to address this issue, then I think we're in a better position to make an informed decision. Yes?
10 years ago, they dumped some dirt in the back of it, baby, and we found 3 needles. And just 10 years ago, I literally just phoned the fire department.
Yeah.
It was Joe, and one of the guys, they came over and they're like, oh my, and they found them. They deposited one, which even though they were old and stuff, you shouldn't ever touch them.
Right.
Hepatitis, all kinds of different bad stuff, and it just take that off.
And I just want to make sure that if we have a phone number for people to call, that we can have a fast response. Now, we've
Yes.
got fire department on pretty much 24/7, so that works. Because the last thing I
They were there
want,
like that. So.
but the last thing that I want, I don't necessarily think it's a 911 call,
No.
because it isn't that.
Just a-
But I don't want somebody to phone on, and I'm just using this is based on nothing other than this conversation. I don't want them to phone Friday night at 5 o'clock and Monday morning, we're still
Well,
there.
that's what I mean.
But it's gotta be, you know, like
The majority of needles will probably be during the day, it's when we find them. I mean, no one's looking at night, you can't see them anyways. So having the fire department come and dispose of them during daylight is probably the best way to go.
I just think that we need to make people aware that there is a number that they can call, and what that's gonna be, and have it.
And
Totally up for a
and
couple
my
signs and each.
what's it, Bill McCracken was just getting elected, and it was 9 o'clock at night, we seen him by the lights of, we drive down the alley.
Yeah.
And he's found the fire department came over at 9:30 at night.
Yeah. But I just think that, you know, before it is more of a problem, I don't think 3 needles is, you know, lights and sirens, but I think it's something that we need to already start looking at, because last thing I want is for a kid to find it and pick it up and not know how to do with it. I was also approached by somebody, and I think this is just easy peasy, but they just need to know who to contact. Our cemetery doesn't have a last post, but we do have people that belong to the Legion that are at the columbarium. Now, there is such a thing as a headstone marker with a poppy for veterans. The overall dimensions of the poppy casting measures 3 3/4 inches high by 3.5 inches wide. The casting has an integral tab cast into the marker for fixing to a headstone. The markers can be permanently fixed to a headstone by drilling a 3/4 inch bore hole, filling the hole with epoxy, and inserting the cast tab. Now, the question is there a way that they can attach these poppies to the columbarium? Because right now there's, like, we're not just going to let somebody go drill a hole in the door and epoxy the thing in there. But is there somebody at the town office that a vet could contact and say they want the poppy? The poppies are $34.95, so I don't think the cost of the poppy is the issue. They just want permission to be able to attach. Whether you grind that little tab off and epoxy it on there, whether you drill a hole in the door.
I don't know, but I will ask Kathy and Jack.
Okay, so do you want me to forward this
Sure.
email request to you? Okay, so that's just for consideration. And again, because we don't have a last post, I think and the poppies are very lovely. They're a bronze,
They're nice.
yeah, they are. And I just think it's a really great way to recognize our vets. So I will forward that to you for consideration. And then I think that was all that I had to report. Deputy Mayor Price.
I've been just talking with construction people and keeping an eye on things and looking at stuff, but nothing to report this time.
Okay. Councillor Hilford.
Me as well. I spent a couple hours with Scott. He's really eager to show everything. You know, there's not really a portion of their construction that's off limits. And it's helped me understand exactly what we're doing deep in the ground and why it's taken so long, and so on and so forth. So that's been really helpful.
Okay. Administration and operations updates.
Not a ton to add to my written report. I'll just briefly touch on 4 areas. We're getting very, very close to having the underground portion of construction done. That's a few days out. That's really the dangerous part of the construction, where you don't know what you're getting into. Costs are a little tricky to predict. We're very, very close to having underground done. We'll be paving tomorrow all the way up to Osler, including the side streets. So those streets will essentially return to normal operations. We'll be following on about 2 weeks later to complete the paving all the way out to Limit. So, you know, assuming the weather doesn't do really bizarre things, you know, by sort of the 3rd or 4th week of October, the street will be normal, the curb and gutter will be normal in terms of everyday flow, things will be approximately normal. We expect to get the vast majority of the hard surfaces done this year, concrete, except concrete planters, things of that nature. If we get good weather, we'll get it done. If we get lousy weather, we won't. So we're a little bit at the mercy of the weather. We did get a very, very late start this year. The frost came out of the ground about a month later than it sort of normally does. And we also had some delays getting out because we had some refurbishment of some old valves and stuff to do. We lost about 7 weeks at the beginning of the project. We've clawed most of that back. If we get a nice fall, we'll be okay. If we don't, we'll have some stuff carry over into next year. But the substantial portion of it, the stuff that actually counts, the underground, the curb and gutter, the asphalt, it'll be normal and nobody will be inconvenienced. It'll be approximately back to normal again. We're not releasing a number, but we are helpfully under budget on this project. You know, it's kind of like being in a baseball game when the pitcher has a no-hitter in the 7th inning. You don't talk about the number when you got a construction project this large. But certainly by the end of October, beginning of November, we should have a pretty hard estimate of what this is going to come in at. And I'm relieved and encouraged, let's put it that way.
And the second lift of pavement.
Yes, sorry, thank you for.
Next year, because that first layer has to be settled before we.
Just so everybody is clear, the reason there is a little bit of a lip on the concrete that we've wrapped very, very slightly with a little bit of asphalt to protect the lip is because we have done so much work underground. Like, I don't know if anybody's seen the size of the storm lines that are going in under there, but we've really, really massively reworked the underground there. You pave it, but you always get a little bit of settling. That's just the way it is. So what we do is we only do the first 2 lifts of pavement and we save about 2 inches. And probably next year, although if we get a lot of settling, we might actually push it back to 2022. You then come in and you do a final layer, a thin layer of pavement where you level everything up. It's exactly what they did in Vista the last couple of weeks ago, where that pavement went in 2-3 years ago. They did a lot of heavy underground work there. You let it settle, and then you do a final coat just so that the final product is very, very nice and level. We will be doing the same thing probably next year, although we'll play it a little bit by ear. Especially down at this end, the storm lines are huge. Like they're like 5 feet in diameter. That's a lot of dirt to move. That's a lot of movement of material. So probably a top lift next year, although maybe the year after that, depending on how it goes.
And then the leftover aesthetics that may take place next year are not going to affect the actual drivability of the street. That will be like the benches and the shrubs and a few little aesthetics.
And again, it's driven by practicality. If it's late October and it's getting cold, why put the shrub in so it can die when we can put it in next year and have it live? So yeah, there'll be some greenery and a few things like that that need to be done. But the big stuff in terms of the functionality of the street will all be in. A little bit more good news on the operating budget. We had made some fairly apocalyptic just-in-case projections or allowances for non-payment of taxes and a few other things. I mean, back in March, who knew anything? We're currently projecting for the 2020 operating budget year a cash flow surplus of $898,000, call it $900,000. We'll be retiring $460,000 worth of debt this year for a cash position surplus of $1.358 million. So that's, you know, substantially better than what we were projecting 6 months ago. Again, that's a number that has a lot of assumptions built into it. That number is based upon a 4% non-payment rate of taxes. So write-offs or non-payments of $184,000 in taxes. Ultimately, we might recover some of that through the tax recovery process or not, but you know, that's the number we're working at just internally. We're assuming that the arena is more or less in normal operations for the fall, and that we get more or less the normal revenues from the arena that we normally get. Given what's happening with the COVID numbers, we'll see. We're assuming that the community hall remains essentially empty. We're getting a tiny trickle of revenue with some hourly rentals and stuff, but the things we get the bulk of our revenue from, weddings, funerals, family reunions, that kind of thing. I mean, that's literally the AHS don't do these things list. So we're assuming essentially no revenue from the hall. We're assuming revenues from utilities stay roughly where they've been for the last 3 billing cycles. When we went into hard lockdown and a lot of our businesses shut down, our utility revenues dropped pretty dramatically. We're again assuming that it's roughly sort of kind of ish status quo in terms of where we are right now. If we were to go into hard lockdown, we'd obviously lose a fairly substantial chunk of utility revenue. And we're assuming the weather is approximately normal. I budget for 3 major snow removals in the fall because that's the historic average. It could be more, it could be less. But given all of those assumptions, we're looking at a cash flow surplus of about $1.35 million this year, which is, you know, historically where we've been running the last 2 or 3 years. So we're not hugely off the baseline. Next year, a couple changes from the profits cut in. The biggest one being we get charged a fairly substantial amount for rural policing. A few other of the minor grants from the province drift down a little bit. It's on the capital side, not the operating side, but we lose a little bit of money on the MSI side as well.
Have they actually come out with the formula now for the policing?
Okay, there is some ambiguity here about what's going to happen in the future. The next 2 years of MSI is on the old formula. 3 years from now, it gets replaced by something called the municipal funding framework. The mechanics behind that are unknown. They maybe foreshadowed this, and this is pure speculation. So don't take this as fact, this is pure speculation. We did get $401,000 from the MSI. They didn't call it, they called it the Municipal Infrastructure Program. Rather than use the MSI formula for that pool of money, which was $500 million, they used the gas tax allocation formula, which was about $60,000 less favorable to us than had they used the MSI formula, because the MSI formula is weighted towards, the gas tax formula is essentially based upon population. The MSI formula is 48% population, 48% assessment, and 4% length of provincial highways within the municipality. Because we've got such a strong assessment base relative to our population base, we do better under MSI. If, speculation, pure speculation, the municipal funding framework were to be allocated according to the gas tax formula, as opposed to being allocated according to the MSI formula, it's about $80,000 a year.
But for policing, do we know what that?
Yes, they have given us a number.
Okay.
I don't recall the exact number off the top of my head, but for next year, it's about 80. It's in the low 80,000 range. And then that ramps up. That's currently 10%, and then it increments up to 30% every year. A lot of the community, or a lot of the organizations, AUMA and RMA, are pushing back really, really hard on that number because allegedly this was going to give us lots more policing and we haven't seen it yet. The other thing is I just don't believe their calculation.
Yeah.
According to the spreadsheet that the province has been kicking around, Crossfield gets just under $1 million a year in policing.
Yeah, I know. You-
Which is the
you-
equivalent of 6 full-time
Yeah.
officers. Like,
Yeah.
Hey, do we even have Kirby back yet? I've seen the other
yeah,
day.
Kirby's backing down.
Okay.
Councillor
But I mean,
has a question.
6 full-time officers,
Yeah.
I mean, that's laughable.
So I think I can remember the second one. The first one, have we decided on a bench style and gone on to places like the community like the Elks to see if they'd like to donate a bench on Main Street and that becomes there permanently? donated?
We haven't approached them yet because our furniture hasn't arrived yet. But
Yeah.
we can certainly increment the order. We have unit pricing, and if people want to donate a bench or anything else.
Yeah, I just think it's-
I would like them to be the same, but pay for a bench. Like, I don't want different
Yeah.
benches out
No,
there.
yeah, well, yeah.
Oh,
No,
If
they
they
have to be
want
the
to, if they
same.
want to have a bench with
They have to be the same.
their
They-
plaque
We can
donated by
decide
the
if we want to do it at our
Absolutely.
cost or whatever, but just as long as they're the same and we'll find a spot on Main Street.
Okay. Another question?
And I can't remember the right one right now. I'll ask you after.
Another update item, as council knows, we're running a pilot project with the Swirltex membrane-based sewage treatment currently. We had a very high-level delegation from Alberta Environment tour the place yesterday. And the town of Raymond is looking at replacing existing funding for a traditional lagoon solution with potentially a membrane-based solution. They've got funding in place for the lagoon, and they're basically trying to get the province to say, approve the new solution, and we all save millions of dollars. I have suggested to council that the most likely approval date for the Swirltex permanent operation would be next year. There is a potential that that might be moved up because of working in cooperation with Raymond. The Alberta Environment, they had a whole pile of questions and we thought we had good answers. Let's hope we actually did, and we'll maybe move this up a little bit. And then there's, obviously there's a number of we have 3 major economic development initiatives that I'm hoping will pop in the next 2 or 3 months, but obviously we won't go public with them until the proponents of them, formally submit their paperwork for zoning changes and other things that are required.
Any questions? If not, can I have a motion to accept the administrative and operation update? Okay. Whichever. All in favor? Lindsay, you can pick one of the two of them. I make a motion. Okay, we have nothing under closed session. Correspondence binder, letter from Fortis, Alberta, proposed 2021 distribution rates. Ken, do you want to speak to what those changes are? It's a whole bunch of information that, do you have information on what this actually boiled down to the rate paper or to the?
I haven't actually had a chance to look at the letter, but I'm assuming it's the same letter they send to me every year. Yes. There are some modest changes to our electrical bill. Pretty minor. Most residential people will see about 5 and a bit percent. The things that directly impact the town are again all in the 5-ish% range. We think we're going to roughly break even relative to where we were a couple of years ago because we converted all of our street lighting from the old hypersodium halogen over to the LED lighting. Now they charge us a little bit more money for the bulb, but we use more electricity. Like we ran the calculation for the 2020 budget, and it was like 1.5%. So I don't expect this will be a big difference.
Ken, one other thing I forgot to ask you, snow removal. So we know that it's going to become an issue on Railway Street this winter. Have we gone and looked in and talked to every business on Railway Street and said, hey, this is what it's going to cost to get your streets removed early with a Kubota with a spinner on it or whatever you guys decide to use, and in turn, we can use that money to operate it and, you know, pay for it.
Yeah, I mean,
On a lease or something.
it would be actually very economical for us to do, because there's a lot of portions of that that are our responsibility.
Yeah.
The pump outs are ours. I mean, we're not gonna make the ratepayers do those, because that's,
And it would be even nicer if we could get it.
and if we're in there,
Right.
we might as well just do it. I mean, it's kind of stupid to go spinner and do like half of it.
Okay, but then let's have I'll make a motion that you bring a report back to council, because last year it was up to the business owners. And that was a whole change, because we were going to not do that anymore. Now, if we're flipping back to us doing it, then I want a cost breakdown and what equipment we're going to use and what difference that is, because we need to let those businesses know.
And you're right, I think.
To request a direction for administration, are you looking at the town just taking it back over like we did in the past?
Well, I
Or
don't
are
know.
you looking at
I
saying,
think they did.
hi for
Yeah,
50
they
bucks a
had
month
it.
for the streets?
Well, I would like to see at least some cost recovery.
Okay.
I think that would be
Yes, it's
fair.
not free, we'd have
But-
to crunch the numbers.
But I think before we decide how that's going to look, I think we need to report back to council.
Okay.
Because, you know, it was a tough enough push to get the businesses to do it to begin with. And we have the empty lots. That part of our rationale for making the businesses do that is you've got an empty lot that's bringing in basically nothing for taxes. And here we are cleaning their sidewalks, some of them corner lots, and making, like really, we're not making enough on taxes to even do the snow removal. So then the onus was put back on the businesses to do that. And if they weren't going to do it, then the town would do it, but it would go onto their tax bill, so that we could make some of these empty lots start paying attention. Now, all of a sudden, if we're gonna take it back over again, then we've got to come up with a plan, whether we're doing half, whether we're doing all, whether we're doing it as a service again for our downtown business, or whether there's gonna be a cost to it. We can't just decide that when the first snow flies.
And it all shit the bed when everybody thought we were doing it 6 times a day, where it just gets done once in the morning, and then the land people are responsible for the rest of the day.
Well, yeah, and
That
it's-
needs to get someplace, because
And-
the bylaw was getting yelled at because we weren't shoveling the walk, where it's like, we did it once this morning and you're guilty.
Yeah. So I think this is a
But
whole,
also, I have a $10,000 bobcat I paid for last year, but let's just say a brush would be a lot less intrusive on your new curves.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking,
My
about that blade.
Are you suggesting
I like the glass.
driving skills may not be fully optimized?
so,
I'm a
so,
good body man, yeah.
so I think that has to come back to the next council
Okay,
meeting.
that-
And I want all that in there.
Motion for administration to produce.
One more,
Yeah.
is there any value in sending out a yay or nay sort of survey? If the town were to do this, would you
Yeah, that's good. Good idea.
be interested in it?
We're talking to them almost every day anyway.
Well,
Because then we
then,
can
yeah.
say 11 out of 12 businesses were totally for
Then
it.
it'll have to be, then they have to understand that it's a majority decision. So if you've got 5
And we
businesses
can't
that
have
don't,
70 okay and 3 not.
yeah,
Sure.
because
That's
again,
way
it's,
more than, yeah.
it has to be
I
majority.
mean,
And then, you know, have all that information come back and
I'm presuming we have an opt-out for people who can document that. they
Yeah,
have
well-
contract.
well, no, I don't think you do. I
No,
don't
you
think
can't,
you
everybody
do.
has to be in, or everybody has to be out.
I think it's,
It
I
can't
think
be
it's
me
like
sort
our
of thing.
garbage at the front. The majority rule is how it's going to be done. And you cannot opt to the end of the block, you can't opt wherever. It's all in or not all in. I mean, that's the democratic process, majority rules. Because I don't then want somebody to clean right up to somebody's property line. Well, then there's a little lip of snow there, somebody slips there, now whose fault is that? And if you're going to come in with equipment and do it, then you do it from end to end on the block around the corner.
Which is-
We'll
Yeah.
we'll
But
get
then-
some report on that,
And
on
then
that.
the old and handicapped people have it's being shoveled by 7 o'clock in the morning. So that they go to the restaurant or the cafe, they know that, and it's not that shorty to get out of bed till 11, and they don't shovel as well.
But then we've got another problem we have to deal with, and this comes up every time that the town says they're gonna clear the sidewalk, is down the side street where you've got the little where you've got the cafe, and you've got the hairdressers, and you've got the woodworking place, there's a house there. And if we clean the sidewalk and we're doing it for the businesses, then by virtue of what we say we're going to do, we do not clean in front of that house.
Or we create a fine, basically a bylaw.
I'm just saying, it has been an issue ever since we have cleaned the sidewalks.
Let's
Because
try it
people
again.
will park by the old grocery store and walk to the restaurant.
Right,
If the house doesn't get their sidewalk cleaned by 7 o'clock, then people are frustrated because this whole section of sidewalk isn't done. If the town does in front of that house, then why don't they do in front of other houses?
let's throw in the machine and see what happens. I mean,
But-
maybe they change their tone and when they are told you guys.
I just speak from a historical
Yeah,
point
no,
of
I
view that
understand.
it's an issue.
I
But
just
if we're
support,
going to come up with something different, I don't want it to be half the business and half the
Yeah.
town. Somebody's got to take ownership of it, somebody's got to do it, somebody's got to be responsible, and we have to have a clear cut process going
Mayor,
forward.
no respect, everyone I've talked to says, you guys can do that, that's awesome, like, they think it's a good idea, and I said, well, there would be a fee involved with doing this, and they didn't mind, they'd rather have it come in and it's all shoveled.
Well,
instead
in the
of-
past, there wasn't a fee for it, and they liked it a lot better when there wasn't
Well,
a
of
fee for
course.
it, so,
That's
as
probably
long as,
like
as long as it's
Crossfield
all
Town.
clear. Anyways, that's my motion, that all that be included in the report for next council. All in favor?
Okay.
Do you have enough direction on?
I know what you guys want.
Yeah.
I've already actually, Jack and I have already talked about this. So
Okay.
I'll get a draft.
I just think that it's gotta be clear, it's gotta be fast, because the snow's coming, and,
It'll be here for the next meeting.
and if we're changing it, then everybody deserves as much notice as possible.
Those little quotas are easy.
Okay.
They're pretty cool.
That's it.
I just had a question, so
Yes.
is there, included in your motion, is it to send surveys to the existing businesses, or is that separate?
You know what, I almost think
Or
I almost think we don't have time for a survey. I would almost like somebody to make a phone call to all of them.
We're with the construction, we talked to them.
Yeah, due to the time.
Because,
Time
because,
constraints.
you know, if somebody's not around, or somebody, you know.
it's not even a business, it's all the vacant lots too,
I know,
We're good with everyone but one.
and the one on the east side too.
Oh, I say under it, you know, you're.
because now we've got that, that's right,
Castles.
and that's a very valid point too, because now, by the time this job is completed, we've got sidewalk on the east side too, so if we're doing
You got
those,
1,000 feet of sidewalk on the other side, yeah.
I mean, that involves them as well. Because I mean, people want to be able
But it is
to,
easier to control where the snow's going, how the snow's going, when the snow is going.
and where it's getting
And
deposited.
as a walking community of a handicapped person that walks with 2 canes, I'd much rather like to have some,
Yeah, that's
some
why,
government
that's why I brought it
control
up.
over having it helped in the morning, but also understood that we are just helping, not doing it 100%.
And you know what, I
Sure.
don't care which lane we pick, I just want it to be very clear
Same, yeah.
and to be out there as soon as possible, and then we're going with the majority.
Shorty,
That's the easiest thing, so.
I want to make things safe for 5-year-olds, and I want to make things safe for guys like you.
Yeah.
That can slip and fall and, you know.
And
break the
if
road.
the town's doing it once and it's a big snow day, then by the end of the day, it's not safe for anybody either. So, I mean,
That's
to
right.
say that we're making it safe for
Yeah.
everybody, be very cautious with your words, because
That's
while
what
we
we
do
have.
our best, then, you know, I mean, you can still slip and fall and stuff.
Yeah, but
Anyway.
yeah, from my feedback, they've all been asking why we aren't proposing that, so I proposed it.
Well, we were clear last year why we
I know.
changed that.
And that's what I said, well, what's changed since last year? Well, I didn't know anything about last year. It's like,
Well,
all right, well,
we
I
made
don't-
sure the information was out there,
you know, I don't
can't
pay
make people read it, so.
for it. Yeah,
Anyway, okay. That was my motion. Okay, we're into gallery questions.
Hello.
Yes,
Is the plan to have the lines painted on the pavement?
No.
no, because we still need a
Because
second.
we gotta
opinion.
talk about
Pave it over next year.
I think people can
As
judge.
as soon as it snows, everybody will remember where to park.
Yeah,
by the time it's melted, then it's ready to paint.
yeah. That side street in front of the laundromat, we really need no parking space. Because you have the angle parking on one side, and no parking on the other.
Yeah, it's a weird setup.
Still lots of cars parking there in front of the laundromat.
We'll get some temporary signs.
The citizen side in puts a pylon, so these are one spot, you can't go between.
Yeah.
I have to write that down. so we can-
And is there any plans to expand the memorial forest of the trees and plants?
Sorry, start that again.
The memorial forest.
Veterans Park.
There,
Potentially,
You gotta
we
make
talked
thoughts
about the
about that.
baseball thing as being an idea.
I have a buddy that wants to plant a plant, but he was told there's more trees available.
well,
Long story.
Everything's a long story, right? Okay, so the history of the Memorial Forest was that the United Church decided they wanted to plant trees up there and kind of beautify that park. So they did. People were invited to buy trees. They did. Some of the trees died. For myself and my family, one family members had 3 trees and the other ones have had 2. And at the end of the day, the United Church was done with that project. So it got turned over to the town. Now, those trees were planted, some of them were planted way too close and there just was no ability for them to survive. So now this last go around, it was that any of the people who still wanted to replace the trees could, and then the town would find spots for them. Now, having said all of that, that was a project that the United Church started. The town as such has taken it over what they were left with, but hasn't really started a memorial forest as its own initiative. We've just kind of inherited that one. So I'm not saying that there isn't space there, but I don't think we've taken it on as a new project and determined, like, maybe instead of Veterans Park, maybe we want to put them in Murdoch Park or somewhere, like different locations. We haven't really taken that on as, that kind of hasn't taken on its own initiative.
We're treading really, really carefully on it, because obviously this is the United Church initiative long ago, and an awful lot of people have emotional ties to the individual trees, so we're being very, very careful because we don't want to.
And it was for anybody that wanted to buy a tree, so it wasn't like I realize it's Veterans Park, but it isn't just veterans. It was anybody that wanted to buy a tree. And kind of at the beginning of the initiative, it was just to get trees in there. So it didn't matter who you were, if you lived in Crossfield, rather than, you know, if you went through Foster, funeral homes or whatever, it was somewhere in Fish Creek Park. And, I mean, you never saw the tree again anyway. So it was just basically to get trees in there. I mean, not to say that we can't pick a new spot and have that. Wouldn't necessarily be that spot, but I don't know that it has to be. Like, were they there thinking of there because they're a veteran, or?
There goes back on.
Okay.
I just wondered if maybe in the spring, moving away some of the foliage might give us some extra room to extend that.
You know what, yeah, maybe, and you know what I would do is let the town office know, because then if people are interested, if all of a sudden, just throwing a number out there, a dozen people are interested, then that gives us an idea of the kind of space we need or the kind of trees we might want to take a look at to find a place for them, rather than, you know, trying to, I don't know, like, then it might be easier to plan it out.
Just as a supplement to that, we're going to be heading into our 2021 operating capital budget discussion pretty quickly. And 2021 on the capital side, this will be the first year in a long, long time where it isn't all spent in advance on the underground. Like, we'll actually have some money to do stuff that people will see. And, you know, I'm personally a big fan of trees, and if you want to get together and let's put together a proposal to turn that into something special, I mean, council will make the decision one way or another, but I think I would at least like to get something that's in front of them.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay.
Because this next year we're gonna have some fun spending on some cool stuff.
We hope. Did you had a
The
question?
entire budget isn't going underground.
I was just wondering if council knows what amount we got for the COVID relief funding from the province?
Do you know what we got for COVID relief funding?
Yeah, well, there's what we know we're going to get, and then there's what we might get. We got, don't quote me on this number, it's close. I believe we got $53,000 through the FCSS program that's being used for direct citizen support. Food hampers.
No, there's another one that just came up that will give you money for lost revenues, it will give you money for.
Yeah, that's run through Alberta Emergency Management. What we're doing is we've aggregated every COVID-related expense into a single line item on our booking.
Yeah, but they sent out a number with a grant for that money.
There's a pool of money. They haven't told us the actual. Okay, are you referring to the operating subsidy number?
Yes.
Or, oh yeah, we know what that number is. I reported that back to council. We had estimated that number based on the early releases as being $350,000. The actual number was very close to what we had estimated. The actual number from the province is $346,952. Okay.
Yeah.
Make up for the wedding food.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
In addition to the 346 I just talked to you about, the reason we declared a local state of emergency during the lockdown is, at least theoretically, emergency-related expenses, we can recover some or all of that from the Alberta Emergency Management Agency. We haven't assumed any revenue for that because they're very slow to pay. When we sent our fire vehicles up to the Fort McMurray fires a number of years ago, it took us just under 3 years to actually get them to. It was at least 2, I think it was
I
closer to
think we're
3.
pretty close to 3 years.
So as I said, we have aggregated all the expenses together. We're going to try and see what we get.
Really?
I mean, it was an original incomprehensible thing. We didn't know it was going to be a massive fire, so.
Yeah, so our directly, explicitly COVID-related expenses, and again, it depends how you want to count them. We've been double shifting our fire department where we have segregated fire crews. We have medical response.
Oh, that's all.
And we have a segregated fire response. We've been keeping the 2 crews apart from each other to prevent possible contamination. We're going to try to recover that under the emergency management funding. We'll see.
It's still.
That's a lot.
I was gonna say that we also have to deal with the feds and the province and then the municipal level, so it's coming down. Everyone keeps asking what's going on, and my friends anyways, I don't have an answer. No one has an
Nobody
answer.
does.
Something that's been chronic during this entire COVID matter is both the federal government and the provincial government, they've announced an awful lot of money. The details have been a little vague. Like the 346 got announced like 5 months ago, and I actually got a hard number like a week and a half ago. So there's been a bit of a delay between announcements and reality.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Right. So you touched bases a little bit on this, Ken, with your report there. The Main Street, my question is on budget on time. You said it's under budget, but we're still behind. Is that correct?
Sorry, I had difficulty hearing you.
Sorry, my question was Main Street's construction was on budget on time, and you mentioned that it was below budget. Was it still on time for, is it October 31st is the end date? Before they start incurring their $2,500?
We will get the hard surfaces in. I'm highly confident of that. In terms of the soft stuff, I'll let you know.
And sometimes too, Justin, to speak to that, because part of the delay at the beginning was our issues with mislabeled valves. That was our reason, like that was our, for lack of a better term, our fault for the delay. So that isn't against them, right?
Another factor,
We're really close.
Paperwork wasn't there.
another factor that's caused us a lot of headaches in terms of scheduling. The 4-party trench where all the utilities are going in on the east side, that's actually put in by Fortis, and the Rivard people have been acting like a regulated government monopoly. So they have. I had no gray hair before I started dealing with those people, and I've put more gray hairs in. So there's probably been, I'll call it 10 days that Rivard has cost us as well. So there will be a little bit of leeway at the end of the contract, because obviously we can't hold the contractor responsible for things that aren't their fault.
And that's put into the contract there.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately this is a try to be fair thing. Ultimately, the town is the arbitrator of what is fair and what is not fair. you want to maintain your reputation within the contracting community, because if we do something that is blatantly unfair, every contractor going forward to the end of time is going to build a risk premium into whatever they bid for town jobs. So,
That's up to them.
hmm?
And that's up to them, for
I mean,
sure.
And,
the short answer is we try to be fair to everybody.
and for example, too, you know, like with that delay, that was the town's mislabeling, that was not, you know, that's not the only time we've run across where we have supposed accurate drawings and then go digging and what's there is not where it shows on the map. And so for, just as an example, if the project is supposed to take 6 months and that in between weather and those valves took a month and a half, then they still have 6 months technically to do the job. If that extends into next year because of weather delays that nobody can control or valve issues that we didn't have the right information on, that's not a lack of planning and work on their part. So it kind of sounds like splitting hairs, but it's a point that has to be taken into.
I'm sure you've dealt with contracts as well, and penalty clauses are for stuff that's your fault.
So now with, I guess, going back to items that were mislabeled, was there change orders put into place in the contracts? We did some extra work outside of the boundaries of the contract to take care of that, and obviously the contractor gets paid for that. We had some other savings along the way because obviously, you know, given the state of documentation of stuff from 50, 60, 70 years ago, we had some meaningful contingencies, even including the additional extra work that we did consequential to some deficiencies in drawings and a few other things. Even including that, we are still meaningfully under budget.
And one of the ironies out of it, and we were talking about this earlier, like even though you drill test holes to see what your contamination could possibly be so that you can kind of estimate into that, that this last block where they're doing from where the shell is and the park is, I mean, when I first moved to Crossfield the first time I was a teenager, there has never been anything on either side except for the park, always on the west side, and on where the shell was, there was never ever anything there. And yet the level of contamination.
It's like worse compared to.
It was worse than our test holes led us to believe was going to be on that block. And I have no idea where it came from.
And what was it contaminated with?
It's petrochemicals.
Petrochemicals. So whether it was something that came off the train sitting there or what, I'm not sure. But so that was something unexpected, like where Deputy Mayor Price's building is, where the end of Oster where they dug up, like that was kind of a three-corner, you know, over the years it was an implement dealer in the garage and a service station and a place where the school buses parked and, you know, all those kinds of things where you got what the test holes were showing. But that last block is a surprise. So yeah.
So what does that mean now for the town, that there's more cost for remediation there?
Well, you just remove more than you anticipate.
Again,
It still comes
we have
in.
when I say we are healthily under budget, that includes the actually my environmental remediation budget is pretty close. About a week and a half ago, I would have told you I would have been well under my remediation budget. I'm now pretty close to my remediation budget. So
It's not contaminated enough that it has to be hauled to Swanhouse or something, it just needs to be turned.
It needs to be dirt farmed.
We don't take it to Swan Hills because it doesn't reach that threshold of contamination. Basically, they take it to a certified landfill site that's set up for remediation of soil, and they spread it around and they aerate it, and they run a hose or they run a tractor through it to aerate it every year. I mean, there's nothing high level.
Pardon me?
That's the way a builder does. 90% of our project was all the underground, and we're gonna have all of it done by like November.
Yeah.
So that'll all be good. We'll be able to drive around town.
Start buying toys.
Except for flowers and plants next spring.
The top shell will be put into the boulevard, that'll be.
They're already down here.
Yeah, they're already starting on this.
Where there's grass, you can already see that dirt was under it, and they packed it down too.
So is the final grade of paving included in the budget there, or that's on top?
Our next lift.
Yeah, that's when I,
The final grade.
Yeah.
that'll happen probably next year, maybe the next
it's
year after
also-
that, but that's obviously included.
But that's in our budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a unit price on that. We know exactly what that's gonna cost us per acre%.
Yeah.
You know, we get charged on the actual cubic meters or square meters of asphalt they drop, so like we'll know within 1%. But yeah, that's already included in the budget.
A question kind of came up from another resident that I thought I'd bring to council, I guess makeshift dog park.
Yeah.
That property that the town owns, is there any long-term plans for that other than what we're currently doing?
You know what, not, probably, yeah, the quick answer is no, not at this point. So what, and, you know, just a little bit of background on that, like we've got the open dog park down towards the golf course, right? And so there was a lot of complaints about that because that's too far to walk your dog. So we thought we would try just in that spot for the time being. I realize it's a pretty barren dog park. I don't own a dog, but it looks pretty boring. We had a couple of other places that we thought maybe we would move it. It's probably time to get feedback from the community again and see if they want it still there.
I just think it's an expensive piece of land, so your dog can go run, go to the bathroom.
So kind of where I'm getting, I'm kind of leading this question into a real question here is, we just sold a piece of land that really nobody knew about.
Mhm.
Like, who knew that the town owned that piece of land other than,
Nobody did, yeah. I didn't even.
so, so where I'm getting at is, you know what, everybody knows that piece of land is for sale. Why are we trying to flog that? Did we need the money, or why did we even really sell that piece of land? And why did, I guess it probably wasn't in the town's long-term forecast of keeping that piece. That's fine, we get rid of it if we don't need it.
Mhm.
But, you know, something for, you know, that big parcel of, you know, how many lots is that? Is that a single lot? And then I'll lead into another question, like on Main Street where, you know, the corner by Brian's there, that's 2 lots, right?
I think it's three.
Yeah.
It's
Another 2 lots.
It's 2.
26.
I already know it's 2.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
You know, how many lots is the dog park? Or could it be created?
But we don't own the one on Main Street.
No,
No, but where I'm getting is the dog park, how many lots was the church sitting
See,
on?
I had a guy that wanted to build a big apartment in there, and then the economy blew up, so nobody wants to buy it. If you want to buy it, you can put an offer in.
Oh, no, what
But
I'm
that's
saying
kind of how
is,
it works with this town stuff, so.
it is, what I'm saying is maybe that's, you know, could be functional residential again.
Yeah, and then I think that's kind of why we left it as temporary, because if, like right now, the town owns the curling rink has a lease for where the curling rink is. But other than those few houses, the town owns that whole lot, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, and certainly there's been some interest over time of different multifamily, whatever. And if somebody wanted to buy that whole parcel and put something on there, that dog park would be gone, we'd find another location for it.
It's not for
Like
sale, it's
it's,
available for purchase. That's how the town works.
Yeah, we're not actively
So-
advertising.
To address your point about attempting to maximize the value of the land, which is, I think, where you're going.
Yeah.
Last year, when we did the remediation of the underground along Limit, we actually dropped in multiple service points along that land, because previously that was I can't remember if there was a single service into it or no service, but anyway, we went in and we put individual services in. So if a builder wanted to come in and say, hi, I want to build 6 houses, we'd be able to accommodate them. And obviously we wouldn't have to shred the road, we'd be able to charge them a connection fee for each of the services that we pre-put in. So by servicing it in advance, we've increased the value of the lot, because obviously for 6 lots, you get more money than if you sell it as one shot.
Which I think is a great idea, like, you know, it's pre-planning, what are we going to do eventually with that lot? We're not going to keep it a dog park forever.
No, you don't.
So,
And we've been
and
talking
it's-
about this for a few years now. It was just this downtown revitalization sort of took first.
and
on that.
And when we
economy.
The other thing we
originally,
have to do is we still have to rip out the old water plant.
Yes.
This
That's
year,
probably
we actually
why.
fully decommissioned the water plant the old water plant, where we actually completely decoupled it from the system. Like it was actually sitting there, it was still pressurized up by our system.
But how much
Just
does it
all
cost?
that land.
How much is cleanup for that lot?
I have gotten quotes all over the map. on that one.
Yeah.
I've got quotes as low as $140.
Clean up of what's
The pumping station.
The old reservoir, but
Because
we don't
that's
know how
a
much
cement-
construction's gonna cost, because they don't really know what they're getting into. It's built like a bunker.
Mhm.
So.
Yeah, if Kim Il-jung launches the nukes, I know where I'm going.
And the original thought on the purchase of that property was that we were going to put the town office and meeting rooms and then the library all on there. Well, then we got all that grant money for remediation on the old hotel for the library. So then it just, and at one time we even thought that we might consider moving the fire department there as well, just based on the fact that we owned all that land. And based on the fact that at one time, now Rocky View County still has their name kind of buried on that title for the fire hall, because at one time it was joint. Now it's more just paperwork than real involvement in it. And so we thought we would even move that over there. And then on further consideration, I mean, you don't really want your fire hall and, you know, lights and sirens and everything screamed out in the middle of a residential either. So, I mean, we've held on to that because if somebody wants to do something, we would love for it to basically take up all that space. So something.
I guess the moral
something
story is
happens.
it's on our radar.
Yeah.
There's also a fair bit of remediation that needs to be done. When the old Baptist church was imploded or destroyed or whatever you want to call it, they basically just folded it into the ground. There's still a bunch of stuff.
Oh, I remember when it happened.
It's still
And
there.
then there's taking out the old reservoir as well. So there's some pretty hefty remediation costs associated with that. I'd love the town to be in a position where we can remediate those two issues you just talked about. We're in a difficult situation right now because if we sell the land, any buyer is obviously going to reduce the purchase price based upon those remediation costs. And there's probably not a lot left over. I mean, the net value of that land is not particularly high because of those two remediation issues.
So what you're saying is where the pump station is included in the lot where the church was.
It could be.
It's
Any
its
more
own,
than
but
that,
because we
subdivide
own
it,
all of that,
subdivide
it could
it, right.
become part of it, like.
It wasn't originally.
It's still a lot there where the church is.
Yep.
It is not part of where the pump station is.
No.
But you own the whole piece
Right.
and you want to sell it as a whole piece.
It
But
depends.
you can sell just that
Oh,
lot.
for sure, yep.
Yeah, we're the town, we can subdivide whatever we want.
You can do whatever you want, yeah. But we need people with the money.
I wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go there.
Dog people here
Take
said
that
we
as
did
a
that,
sprinkle of salt, please, but yes, yeah.
Yeah, no, where I'm getting at is, okay, let's, kind of
What's
a
the
little
right word?
housekeeping here in town on our, what we own
Right.
and do it wisely. That's what I'm just
Sure.
wondering about.
And a couple of the areas where we thought maybe we would put the temporary dog park was kind of over by the ball diamonds where the skateboard park and all that kind of stuff is, because that's just kind of vacant space and not really too useful for anything else. Like just given its triangular
Which is also
shape.
why we bought cheaper fencing, I believe.
Well, that was part of it, and
Because we knew it
again,
was gonna-
and I'm not being a dog owner, so
How many
I,
years has it been there?
at Baptist Church.
Yeah. It was there before I became.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not-
4-ish? Yeah.
Oh, that's really.
But,
Four, maybe five.
but a lot of people didn't want to walk that far either.
I know. They
I know, like to
Everything
me,
is
I'd like to, if I owned a dog, I'd take it out to the golf course, because that's, out that way, because that's a nice open space. Having said that, it's not fenced. So unless you've got really good control of your dog, or your dog listens well, you may not want to take your dog there and just let it run around either. So I get that a fenced off leash is ideal, but I always thought that people would take their dog to the dog park, but it was a big argument because they didn't want to walk all the way over there, they don't want to walk all the way out there. And so then because it was vacant and because it was kind of a pilot project, we decided that that's where we would put it.
Which is,
Yeah. Sorry?
I'm not that.
Yeah, I just I think
Anyway,
it's just priorities.
but
Project in our town,
it is temporary.
and this
So you have
project
to
will kick
move.
it off and go for the next one, so it's fine.
Any other questions?
Oh, I just had a little comment about when you guys were talking about the needles and what direction you guys should go. This is just a suggestion of mine is give the city a Calgary call, give the, Alberta Health Services, get some direction from them. And, say, okay, what do you guys
Our
do?
fire chief will do that.
What do you guys do? And, hey, this is what we do when we get a call, we direct it. And you'll probably get the same answers you guys are already, the path you guys are going down already, give the fire hall a call.
Actually, I know what City of Calgary does. If people find needles, they phone Fire Dawn Emergency, and then the Alpha House has a team that comes out and does needle pickups.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I guess it's pretty simple. I do have another suggestion about your snow removal.
Yeah, what?
You just do it. The town does it, you measure off the frontage,
Yeah, square foot, yeah.
and what is your cost?
I agree, yep.
And you add 15 points onto that to cover it and a little bit extra. And that's what you charge each lot.
Landowner, yeah.
And every lot owner, if he's got 100 feet of frontage, this is what whatever.
You're basically talking about special area assessment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
exactly, that's exactly.
That's all I would do, and I would let them know this is what the town is doing.
Not even.
That's-
Then we decide sometimes we get in trouble because we didn't ask them.
Sometimes you need to ask, how would you feel?
And
about
again, my
Not
point
good.
was, I don't care how we do it, I just think that they deserve to know as quick as possible, because last year it was totally different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You tell them well in advance
Yeah.
what they're doing, and they will be fine with it, whoever, and if they're empty lots, you know what,
Yeah,
they're empty
well,
lots.
the problem is a couple empty lots and they're side lots, so we are doing it for free and she doesn't like that because she's thrifty. I mean, she's protecting the town.
Well, I just don't think it's fair to.
Oh, and it isn't, it isn't.
You know?
What I'm
That's
saying
some of
is,
my lots.
it is, there's a cost to the owner of that lot, either way, whether you do it or he does it or she does it.
And if we do it, at least it's uniform and on.
So Justin, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
So like on the street by the post office, so you're on the south side of the post office, that's an empty couple of lots there. Then you start heading west,
Yes.
and then you've got your lawyer's
Yeah,
office, your
lawyer's
real
office.
estate office, your.
Same as-
Yes.
So do you go to that end?
You
Okay,
bet.
and then across the street, so it doesn't matter where the businesses end, you would go to the end of the businesses and stop.
Just to the end of the business and stop. Because there's no,
There's that one house up
There-
that's behind me,
it's one house.
one house, yeah.
It's
But if we
one
do it for
house.
one person, we have to do it for all.
And the reason I say that is because I've heard it.
I know.
I've heard it.
I
I've
would-
heard it. Truly, I have.
Even if it's a house, it gets charged, right?
Yeah, because maybe in their central business district, we can just say, hey, we're paying.
Hey, just say you're in the line of fire here, this is what's gonna happen, and you know what is it really gonna be costing on their taxes? And you know what, they might even say, hey, I'm not shelling my block.
But then, can I have that option if I'm willing to pay and I'm in the middle of another block?
I don't think so, like, people would understand, it's, you know what, it's one house,
Sometimes they don't understand.
Yeah, and
but it's too bad, it's too bad, you know what, people will forget about it, and it's, you know
People will
what.
understand, not just have it right.
What's that?
People will understand, can I get that right?
For sure, yeah. That's what I would do, is if there's one house, you know what, you're in the line of fire to these other businesses.
See, I'm a
And
business, I'm okay.
this is our program. And you've got, how wide is the lot? 50 feet or 40 feet?
The 26-foot a lot around Main Street, yeah. So every lot you own is 26 feet.
So it's,
And it's the side.
whatever percentage of that is like
Yeah.
nothing.
I mean, it would be a quick calculation for sure, yeah.
But that's, I don't know, that's the way I would tackle it. Measure it off,
Yeah.
reasonable, each lot owner.
I just know that before with that one house especially, it was a big issue. It just would not go away. Having said that, I mean, it's a new day and worth looking at again for
That's
sure.
what we're doing.
And I hope that you two get in, because you guys seem to show up and talk to us and have questions and answers. And I don't know anybody, I'm not electing or anything, but the people that are being involved, like yourself to show up and yourself to show up, Thank you.
And I
You
look
know why?
forward to working
Because that's what it
with
takes
two of
to
you.
get the tribe.
Anyways, somebody want to make a motion? Any other questions for, okay,
We're good.
okay,
Okay, bye.
or adjourned. Thank you very much.
Hello.
Yeah, maybe that's if you want.
Well, it's even